A big thanks to Cheddar's Chef for sponsoring this episode. I discovered a new cheap steak. I'm going to show you the new steak. I'm going to show you how to prepare it. But first, we need to prepare our barbecue. Birch burns really light. It's the same stuff that matches are made of. But the unique feature is in the bark. Yeah, bark. Because there are natural oils in bark. And those natural oils will burn up super quick. I'm going to build a small tower with the bark pointing inwards. Put in a couple of fire starters, light them up. And on top of that, I'm going to place a large piece of birch tree. It's also going to burn light, but this has more volume to it, so more energy, and it will heat up the plate faster. And once I got a good base fire, it's time to add some hardwood. I like to use beech. This is really hard wood. This is going to create the perfect ember that's going to sit in this barbecue for a long time, and it's going to radiate a lot of heat, which is really good if you want a hot plate. And this is the steak. And this might look like an ordinary piece of meat, but it really is not, because the cow only has 2 of these. So that means in one cow we can have only 2 of these steaks, whereas with a ribeye, a cow has a whole lot of those steaks. So that's why you see more ribeye than you see this. But that doesn't mean this steak is no good. No. In reality, this steak is better than a ribeye steak. And now you might think that if this is such a good steak, it must be very expensive. But the opposite is true, because the butcher eats it himself. That's right, you heard it. You won't see this in the butcher store. This is going to the kitchen table to the butcher's wife, which is going to cook it for him when he comes home after a hard day's work. But everybody wants this, but they just don't know that they want it. This is what you need to understand. And this is called the butcher steak. It is called the hanger steak. In Dutch, we call it longhaas. But this steak does require special treatment, because as you can see, it has thick fibers. And thick fibers means a coarse structure in your mouth, and you have to cook it a special way, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. But first I'm going to fill my blender up with 80 grams of rucola lettuce, followed by 20 grams of fresh basil, 100 milliliters of beef broth, 100 milliliters of olive oil, a quarter cup mayonnaise, some fresh ground pepper, and then I'm going to grind that up into a smooth puree. Let's give this a try. That is good, but it needs more salt. So I'm gonna add half a tablespoon of salt, and then the sauce is perfect. With that sauce ready, it's time to focus on this beautiful piece of meat. There's one thing that we need to talk about, and that's the grains and the direction that they run in. You can see clearly that the grains run in a cross direction. Now I want to eat my steaks in medallions to make it look really posh and as good as it possibly can. I'm going to cut this steak up into medallions, and I'm going to make sure that I present them in this way. Now, if you get this on your table and you're going to eat it with a knife and fork, then it's going to be very easy to cut, and the steak is going to end up very tender. I could just eat this now and do the rest later. We make a carpaccio. Oh, and we can taste the sauce with it. Test it, like with the meat. Because this is like the perfect carpaccio sauce. Like, just like that. Boop. And then. Back to the story. This piece has some fat on it. That's what I'm going to remove. Normally I would definitely leave that on. But for this recipe, I'm cutting off the excess fat and silver skin. I'm gonna cut all these steaks up into medallions and wrap them in bacon. And the bacon is the fat that I want on the outside, and the bacon is going to add flavor to the steak. Just make it nice, salty, crispy on the outside, because in itself this meat is rather lean. Before I'm going to continue with my steak, I'm first going to slice fine an onion, chop up some garlic, and these are chipotle chilies in adobo sauce. They're also gonna get chopped fine. And now it's time to really start cooking. I got a pan ready next to the hot fire. My plate is screaming hot, and I'm gonna use that heat to first fry my ingredients. So the onion and garlic go onto the plate. Then on goes a little bit of oil. You can use any oil that you like as long as it's got a high smoke point. I just want these onions and garlics to become sweet and soft. And all these ingredients are for the second sauce for this dish. The onion is almost ready, so I'm gonna add the chili peppers in adobo sauce. I'm not saying you need a gas mask, but you definitely need a gas mask. Now this is starting to look good. I'm going to transfer it to my pan. To it, I'm going to add about a cup of olive oil. I'm going to let that come up to temperature and I'm going to give it a light fry. So the oil is going to become hot. The ingredients are going to release all of their flavors into that oil. And that's going to be a magical oil, like a chili oil. But then like a Mexican version of a chili oil. Just way better, so much flavor. And talking about flavor, we're also going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. Now it's time to go back to my steaks and I want to sear them off on a hot barbecue, and that's why I'm using the Shadow Chef Boma grill. It is a wood fire grill and it's going to deliver me exactly the features that I need for my steak. This plate has multiple hot zones. The one close to the fire is super hot, and the farther away you are from the fire, the less intense the heat becomes. Now you gotta think about our steak. The meat inside is delicate, and as you saw, I can eat it raw. So my goal is not to cook the steak all the way up to the temperature where I would normally cook a ribeye. I wanna go a little lighter than that. But what I do need is a good crust on the outside, on that bacon, getting it nice and crispy, the fat to render down, and all of that salt to go on top of that steak. Let's prepare this cooking surface first. And that's very easy to do. I'm just going to drizzle on a little bit of oil, and then with a clean rag I'm just going to make it non-stick. I can see from my onions right there I got a little bit of a crust. I want to get rid of that. That's not non-stick, and it's as easy as just scraping it off, putting the ashes into the fire and applying another layer of oil. And once again, this is now a non-stick surface, perfect and ready for our steaks. I'm going to put the steaks on the outside of the grill. And you can already hear that sizzle. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil because this is very lean meat. Let's see if we build up a little bit of crust. That is starting to look good. So I'm gonna sear the other side now. Time to use our chipotle oil and add more flavor to our steaks. Ooh! That is adding flavor. Now that I got a crust on both sides, I'm going to sear the bacon. Oh, I love this. This is my favorite part. Playing with the fire, working on getting some flames in. Just look at it. The only thing I need to do is tap it lightly and I get flames. And that's the end result. After resting for about 5 minutes, you end up with a juicy steak with a crispy crust. Now let's plate up and bring everything together. I'm going to start by plating up the sauce. Then on goes my chipotle, onions and garlic, and then my delicious steak. And there you have it. Ooh. All right. Oh, I messed up the whole plate. One instance. There we go, a little bit of everything. Rich, creamy, spicy, but above all, very, very tasty. This is one magical steak. Wow. This is so good. Mmm.